All of the comments that will be made today and all of the documents that are received today will be made available, the complete transcript, on our state website, which is www.michigan.gov/lowerratesnow, www.michigan.gov/lowerratesnow. And so we will make sure that you have everything that we have, so that whether it's at this hearing or any other hearing, all of those documents and the transcripts and everything will be transparent to the public. How are we doing, Madam Court Reporter? Almost there? Okay. Also, before we get to the transcript, just for your knowledge, just outside the door and just a short jog to the right is the restroom, just in case anyone needs that. And also, there are refreshments on the lower level. So if you need either one, that's where they are. You know what I think we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, you got it? 1 second? Countdown. Hi, Terry. I see you out there. We'll go ahead and get started, and just because it's the preliminary, and this won't be as necessary to be on the court reporter list. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First thing I want to do is to thank the facility. This is a beautiful campus, Grand Rapids Community College, and we are thrilled to be here. And I want to thank Ann Mulder, who is the interim president, and Bob Partridge, the executive vice president, and the person who really did all the work, Becky Yoder, the building manager. So we are just really delighted to be here on your campus for this important hearing. I'd like to also take this moment now to introduce the head of the Office of Financial and Insurance Regulation, otherwise known as our state's insurance commissioner. It's a big title, and he's got a big job, and we couldn't have anybody better serving in that role. So I'd like to introduce Kenneth M. Ross, the insurance commissioner for the state of Michigan. Please give him a hand.
Thanks, Butch. I'm here to be with Butch today to listen to your comments, all interested parties on this issue, the issue of affordability, because in my mind, in Michigan, we are extremely lucky to have the most generous benefit package of any state in the nation. We have unlimited lifetime benefits for those involved in catastrophic insurance accidents. But even though we have the most generous benefit package in the nation, of course, there's not an unlimited amount of money. We collectively, as citizens of this state, as ratepayers, as premium payers through our auto insurance, pay in to support that system. So the question, of course, of rates and affordability is certainly tied to the issue of access, because you can have the most generous system in the nation, but if it's unaffordable and people can't afford to pay for those premiums, it's not going to be one that the legislature intended ultimately as one that's long-term sustainable. So I'm interested in hearing your comments as the chief regulator of insurance in the state of Michigan, and so I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ross. Also, I'm sure I don't need to say it, but if you would just check to make sure that your cell phones are off or turned to vibrate or silent, please, that would be a big help. So if you would just check your cell phones. I know you may have already checked it on the way in, but sometimes things happen. Let's go over a couple of the rules here. We're here to discuss affordability. This is auto insurance affordability, and these hearings are required by law. We're here to address two questions. So it's not the waterfront, if you will. I mean, we have to focus. And so today the focus is on two things. Number one, are Michigan's auto insurance rates affordable? That's question number one. Are Michigan's auto insurance rates affordable? And number two, has Michigan's deregulation of the insurance industry allowed for adequate oversight of company rates? Has Michigan's deregulation of the insurance industry allowed for adequate oversight of company rates? So these are the two questions that we are going to be looking at. As I said before, we're going to take the testimony that we have. We'll make that available for you. Now, in the lobby, there were testimony cards. They're little cardstock cards that are like this. And so if you'd like to testify, please fill that out. Even if you don't testify, please fill it out so we can stay in touch with you in terms of what this process is. In the end, what's going to happen is that the testimony that comes out of these 4 hearings is going to help to inform some of the recommendations that I'll make to Governor Granholm in my annual report that's coming up in December, sooner than you think. And the governor then will decide what to do with those recommendations. So that is really why we're doing this. We just really feel it's important to hear from you. So I'm going to take a second and go through a couple of no-fault background matters. Kathy, I think we can take that screen to the blank screen. No Fault started in 1973. I was a freshman in high school at University of Detroit High School. So really my class was one of the first classes that drove under no fault insurance. And so it's 35 years later. And really what these hearings are getting at is, what do we like about this system? And, what could be improved about this system? But what I wanted to start with is very low tech, was the famous no-fault promises. Promise number one, I went to Catholic school, but still my handwriting's not very good. It was that it's simple. Okay, so the simplicity of the system is important because we used to have all these lawsuits. And people were suing everybody, was suing everybody else about getting benefits, and that was probably not such a good thing. Very expensive process, very time-consuming process, and so we didn't want the wild, wild west. We wanted something that was more simple. So there was a professor that came up with this idea, Jeffrey O'Connell, right, Pete? And Professor O'Connell said, well, what if we had a system that you would go directly to your insurance company instead of having to sue somebody? So simple. The number 2 famous no-fault promise was generous benefits. And that was, I think, the genius of Governor Bill Milliken. What he was really getting at there was, when you are injured in one of these accidents, we want to make you whole. We want to make you whole. And so these lifetime unlimited benefits is something that was the cornerstone of what Governor Milliken used in the legislation. Generous benefits. And then the number 3 promise of no fault. Anybody remember what the third promise was? Somebody I heard say it. Lower rates. Why would this mean lower rates? Well, you'd get rid of all those lawsuits, more people would be insured, the margins would grow, and those economics would be placed into the system. Now, as a trade-off, however, for this famous 3 no-fault promises, it looks like you can read that, huh? Okay. Was number 1, no suits, right? No lawsuits unless there is death or very serious injury. Okay, so no suits. And then number two, the other promise, or the other thing that had to be done was now you are required to have insurance. Okay, so simple system, generous benefits, reduced rates, and on the other side, no suits unless death or serious impairment of bodily function, and now you are required to have this insurance. You're held by the lapels, and the penalties are up to a year in jail if you don't have insurance in Michigan. So that's not anything to sneeze at. So, again, the promise of lower rates. Kathy? But there was a twist. Actually, rates didn't go down. They went up. Some have talked about why the rates went up, and I'm sure we may hear something about that today. But we now have this requirement aspect of no-fault insurance, and rates are beginning to go up. So, in 1978, next slide, the Michigan Supreme Court, in a real famous case, Shavers versus Attorney General, you may remember Soapy Williams was the Chief Justice at that time. He used to always wear those bow ties with the polka dots. Remember that, Terry? We had this famous case that Shavers said, look, you cannot require somebody to have insurance. That is, you, the state, cannot require people to have insurance unless you make sure that rates are affordable or that rates are fair and equitable to the consumer. You can't require that unless they're fair and equitable to the consumer. And so what they did is declared no fault unconstitutional in 1978. Okay. At the end of that opinion, the Supreme Court said, all right, we've got an order. And our order now is to the legislature. You got to fix this. You got to come up with a definition of affordability which ensures that rates are fair and equitable to the consumer. Well, the legislature then fixed it all right. They passed what's called the Essential Insurance Act. And they defined affordability as reasonable competition among insurers. So their definition wasn't at all what the Supreme Court said. Their definition said, so long as we can show that there's competition, that by definition means that it's affordable, regardless of whether the consumer has the ability to pay or not. So what do we have? We have two definitions of affordability in Michigan. It's a strange kind of situation. You have the Supreme Court saying that rates must be fair and equitable to the consumer. And you have the legislature that says, well, we just have to have reasonable competition among insurers. So we have two definitions of affordability, and they live side by side. And they're at war with each other. Next slide. So what's the result? Oh, before we get to the result, I just wanted to talk about this affordability debt. This is a 401-word definition. I just wanted you to see this. 401 words. It is riddled with so many loopholes and exceptions, and you just can't believe, it would take you a year to read it. 401 words to define affordability. Next. I wanted you to compare that to the Gettysburg Address, which is 272 words. Now, Lincoln was saving the entire Union, and he did that in 272 words, and the legislature's definition of affordability is 401 words. So here's the result. Michigan has some of the highest rates in the nation. If you look at where our rates are now, we're at about $1,000. The highest in the country is New Jersey, so we're right on their heels. We have the highest collision premium in the United States. We have the highest urban premium in the United States. We have the fastest rate of increase in the United States, 69% since 1989. So that is the number that, all these numbers catch my attention because, we're paying this at a time when we can least afford it. when plants are closing and the like. But this 69% number means we're not going to be behind New Jersey for very long. Next one. And this is also at a time of record profits in the insurance industry. This $63.7 billion profit in 2006 was the highest in U.S. history. The profit in 2005 was also set a U.S. profit record. 2004 also set a U.S. profit record. 2003 also set a U.S. profit record. By the way, these numbers still even include the losses from Katrina. So 2001, I think we all know what happened on September 11th of that year. So there was something, but I just wanted you to see that these are the national numbers for the property and casualty industry in terms of profits. Next slide. Deregulation. We did some things in Michigan that I want to have a conversation with you about, the Michigan public. Rates can be raised now without prior approval. So if a company, I met with an insurance executive the other day, says, "Oh yeah, we just took a 7% increase last summer," and said it very matter-of-factly. We took a 7% increase, because the prior approval is not required. The law does not allow the commissioner to order refunds, even when they're required or when it's apparent that they're needed. And we take into account the way that people pay your bills, the level of education that you have, what you do in terms of your job. So if you're just a working Joe, not Joe the plumber, but if you're a working Joe, and let's say you didn't graduate from high school and you work in one of the factories in Grand Rapids, again, you didn't finish high school, you would pay 2 to 3 times what a doctor in Bloomfield Hills would pay with the same driving record. That's what that does. And I asked one of the insurance executives, that I met with, I said, well, you can control your credit, history, but that's not really true. I mean, if the plant closes and you find yourself in difficult circumstances, sometimes these credit reports they're not updated. There's no standard. So this is the deregulation that we're talking about. So how do we make rates more affordable? That's why we're here today. So we have some individuals that we'd like to have address us today, and I'd like to hear from you. And as I said, this is the first round. There'll be 3 others, and then we'll try to put it in some kind of a form, some kind of a report that makes some sense for dealing with this situation. So I think we can just lift the screen. Is Representative-elect Schmidt here? Okay, so I know he's coming. All right, we're going to start then with Bernie Bernbaum. Mr. Bernbaum was selected as an expert in this area because he serves as the executive director of the Center for Economic Justice. He's out of Austin, Texas. He has a long history of working on behalf of consumers on insurance issues. He was Associate Commissioner for Policy Research, and he was the Chief Economist at the Texas Insurance Department. And he provided expert testimony in numerous proceedings regarding insurance rates and availability. He has expertise in risk classification, all that stuff. And he holds master's degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Management and Urban Studies and Planning, one of the few national consumer advocates that is funded by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And he's also on that board of consumer trustees. So at this stage, I would like for Bernie Bernbaum to come up. He is going to give his testimony from the podium over there.
Right over there?
Right over there.
Okay, is this on? Everybody can hear me, I guess. Just taking a minute to get my computer set up here. But the first thing, ooh, what do we got? Is this better? No?
Better.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me to come offer some testimony and comments. I am Bernie Bernbaum. I work as a consulting economist.
Mr. Bernbaum, sorry. Could you pull the microphone maybe down a little bit forward? Down, maybe toward, yeah, there you go.
Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay. I work as a consulting economist. As you said, I also worked for the Texas Department of Insurance as the Associate Commissioner for Policy and Research, and also as the Chief Economist. I have had a lot of experience on auto insurance rates, rate making, availability, and affordability. I did the first analysis of affordability in Texas when I was there in the mid-90s. One small correction, I am one of the designated consumer reps at the NAIC. I work on behalf of the Center for Economic Justice, which is a nonprofit based out of Austin, Texas, that advocates on behalf of consumers. The NAIC doesn't fund us to participate. They reimburse our travel expenses to allow us to participate. We volunteer our time for that activity.
Thank you.
And I've been retained by the Insurance Consumer Advocate to analyze and report on the state of Michigan's auto insurance market and the system for regulating auto insurance and providing consumer protection. I thought that today the first place that I would start with is, what are consumers paying for auto insurance? And this is a tough one because it's hard to actually figure out what any individual consumer is paying. Individuals know what they're paying, but to sort of make some generalizations, it's pretty difficult. What we tend to do here is we look at information that's gathered by insurance regulators around the country. And the National Association of Insurance Commissioners puts out a report called, now it's called the Auto Database. And they present what's called the average expenditure. They basically tally up all of the amounts consumers spent on auto insurance, and they divide it by the number of insured vehicles. And they break it down between the liability coverages and then the physical damage coverages. Physical damage coverages are comprehensive and collision. They're basically insurance for your vehicle. Liability coverages tend to be coverage to protect somebody that you injure, either the person or their property. And then there's no fault or personal injury protection. So the latest numbers from the NAIC are for 2006, and they show that in Michigan the average expenditure for auto insurance was $925 per vehicle. This was significantly higher than the national average of $817. Perhaps a little more interesting is that the Michigan expenditure has increased pretty dramatically in the last several years. In 2001, the expenditure was $735. By 2004, that had increased to $980, a 33% increase. Comparatively, the U.S. was at $726. So in 2001, Michigan was $735, the U.S. was $726. But by 2004, Michigan was $980 compared to only $842 for the U.S. So whereas the U.S. average increased by 16%, Michigan rates premium, or the average expenditure, increased by 33%. Now rates have come down a little bit, or the average expenditure has come down a little bit both in Michigan and the U.S., so that by 2006, it's $925 in Michigan compared to $817. So as you can see, there's still been a significant increase in Michigan since 2001 and much greater than the national average. Now, what's interesting about this is that in in most of the country, the liability portion is the biggest. Bodily injury liability and property damage liability is the biggest portion of the insurance premium. But and given that no fault in Michigan is supposed to be so generous, and I must admit that I disagree with the description of it as generous. To me, it's coverage for a catastrophic event. It's what insurance is all about. I don't think of it as being generous. I think it's what insurance is supposed to be. I think other states are stingy. But the breakout of it was in 2006, liability was $494 versus collision was $415. Now, what's interesting is that the liability portion for Michigan is not even close to the top of the country. It's much lower than a lot of the states, whereas overall Michigan is 13th in average expenditure. The liability portion is much lower than 13th. The collision is second highest. So, as you hear the discussion about the high cost of no fault, things like that, the overall cost of liability insurance in Michigan is certainly in the middle of the country, whereas its collision is very much at the high end. Now, one of the things that we've seen is that in 2005 and 2006 there was a small reduction in the average expenditure, and of course the reason for that, we hope, is because insurers were responding to reductions in claim costs. And what the data show is that in 2005, 2006, and 2007, the number of claims and the amount paid out for claims per vehicle was dropping pretty dramatically. And that continued through 2007. Yet what we've seen in 2008 are a number of rate increases filed by insurers. We've seen State Farm go up 3%, Allstate go up 7 to 9%, Farmers go up almost 10%. And this is despite the fact that the assessment for insurers from the MCCA, which is the reinsurance mechanism for the no-fault, despite a reduction in that assessment, rates have gone up in some cases significantly. Now, the question that the consumer advocate has asked is, are rates affordable? Is insurance affordable in Michigan? Now, affordability obviously is a difficult thing to talk about for any one individual or for the state generally. But we can look at the first cut, we can look at some average numbers. As said, Michiganians pay the 13th highest average expenditure according to the NAIC report. That compares to in 2004-2005, Michigan having the 27th highest median household income. So while Michigan is in the top quarter, certainly number 13 in terms of auto expenditures, it's right in the middle of household income, which means that it's paying a higher percentage, Michiganians are paying a higher percentage of their income for auto insurance than consumers in most other states. And the burden of auto insurance, again, on average, can be shown with the fact that there are higher uninsured motorist rates in Michigan. The Insurance Research Council in 2004, which admittedly is a little dated, reported a 14% uninsured motorist rate countrywide, but 17% in Michigan. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the aggregate numbers because the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people who may be paying less than the average, but who don't make a lot of money, and it's still a burden for them. The averages don't tell us a whole lot about the burden on many individuals. And the fact that consumers pay the average doesn't tell us that large numbers pay more than the average in many cases, and in a lot of those cases, much more than the average. Now, we used to think that high insurance premiums were reserved for bad drivers, but that's not the case anymore. insurers are now using a host of rating factors that penalize consumers for economic conditions. Before I get into that, let me ask you to consider some of these just heart-wrenching numbers. In 2007, Michigan had the third highest foreclosure rate of any state. There were almost 2% of the homes had foreclosure filings. 136,000 homes were foreclosure filed in Michigan. And since 2005, there have been over 300,000. Over 200,000 of which just in 2007 and 2008 to date. The unemployment rate in Michigan is 8.7%, second only to Rhode Island. Just this year, in the last year, there have been 80,000 net jobs lost in Michigan. Now, why does this matter for auto insurance? Well, it matters because insurers are using a variety of rating factors that punish consumers who encounter economic adversity, which is another way of saying factors that punish the middle class today. Let's look at some of these factors. Many of you know that insurers use credit history. Well, credit history clearly has a terrible impact on people who've lost their jobs, people whose home are being foreclosed. Through the use of credit history, insurers can get more income without even raising their rates. As more and more consumers encounter economic adversity and their credit histories deteriorate, their rates go up even without a rate change by an insurance company. Insurers use employment and education. If you're employed in certain jobs, you get a lower rate than if you're employed in other jobs or if you're not employed at all. Insurers charge you a higher rate depending upon your education level or your lack of an education level. Insurers charge more for what you previously purchased. It's called prior bodily injury limits. So if you previously purchased the minimum limits required by law, you complied with the law, and somebody who's got the exact same situation as you, except they previously purchased something higher than the minimum, even though you're both buying the same product, you pay more because you previously purchased the minimum limits. Who does this affect? Well, it clearly affects, people in the middle class who are trying to figure out a way to economize on their insurance. Household composition. Let's say that you're trying to economize on insurance and you say, look, we can do without two cars. We're going to go with one car. Well, what happens is that, sure, you're not paying for that second car insurance, but insurers will now raise your rate on the first car because you have more drivers per vehicle. Insurers give you, quote, a discount if you buy multiple products from them, if you buy life insurance as well as renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance. Well, that's great, except the people who only buy auto insurance are paying for the discount that the other people are getting. And you'll have to explain to me why my not buying a life insurance policy from my insurance company makes me a worse auto insurance risk. So what you don't see today are rating factors that are weighted heavily towards driving record and miles driven. You don't see rating factors that are under the consumer's control and that give the consumer an opportunity to really economize on insurance. Now, if somebody's lost their job or with the price of gas going up and they drive many, many miles less, right now you don't get a break on your auto insurance. Maybe sometime in the future, and then maybe not at all. Why isn't there a situation, why isn't there a system in place that if you say, look, I'm having trouble affording driving my car as well as auto insurance, I'm going to drive a lot fewer miles, that you don't see a reduction right off the bat? Why is that? Well, the reason is because of the current rating structure. And the current rating structure, I guess, is attributable to the second question that the insurance consumer advocate asked, which was, what about deregulation? And in my view, there's clearly a failure of the regulatory system. Michigan statutes are set up to say insurance companies have to use and may only use specified rating factors, including, and they list them in the statutes. Things like the number of years you're licensed to operate a vehicle, average miles driven, the type of use, vehicle characteristics, amount of commuting mileage, number of cars insured, and the amount of insurance. So how is it that if these are the only factors that are specified, when you look at an insurer's rate filing, you see all these other things? Well, the answer is there's another provision which is called the section for discounts. And this section says that an insurer can provide a discount. If uniformly applied to all insureds, an insurer may establish and maintain a premium discount plan utilizing factors in addition to those permitted by Section 2111, which is the one I just talked about, for insurance if the plan is, 1, consistent with the purposes of this Act, and 2, reflects reasonably anticipated reductions in losses or expenses. Now, what do you think that means? Well, what is consistent with the purposes of this Act? Well, the purposes of this Act are clear. It's the Essential Insurance Act. 2 things. 1, does this thing promote greater affordability and availability of insurance? Number 1. And number 2, does it promote loss prevention? Does it encourage consumers to engage in less risky behavior? And of course, the second thing, does it reasonably reflect anticipated reductions in losses or expenses? So what's the type of discount that's envisioned by this statute? Well, how about an anti-theft device for your vehicle? If I go out and get an anti-theft device for my vehicle and my insurance company gives me a discount for that, then basically what's happened is that discount pays for itself in lower claims. Everybody who goes out and gets an anti-theft device, that means that there are going to be that many fewer auto thefts. So if I go and get an anti-theft device discount, you don't have to pay for it. That discount pays for itself with lower claims. That's what this statute means, that the discounts have to be things that actually result in lower losses. But what's happened is that somehow the insurers have said, look, anytime we can show some kind of statistical relationship between a rating factor and expected losses in aggregate, we can use it. So they say, we'll use credit scoring because people with really good credit scores have on average, they claim, lower claims. Yeah.
We're going to need to wrap it up a little bit.
Okay. But the only way they can pay for the discount for somebody who gets that credit scoring discount is to charge somebody else more. And if you go back to that list that I talked about, all of those things require somebody else paying for the other people to get that discount. There's no reduction in losses. And this is clearly a problem with the deregulation in the auto insurance market here, because the competition in a normally competitive market, competition benefits consumers. In this case, it's competition that doesn't benefit consumers as a whole. In some cases, it penalizes consumers. And the consumers it penalizes generally are going to be those middle-class consumers who are already having a difficult time paying for insurance. So I'll stop with that today, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I want to go right to the heart of the matter, and just a simple, I think yes or no would be required. 1, are Michigan's auto insurance rates affordable in your opinion?
No, not for a large portion of the population.
2, has Michigan's deregulation of the insurance industry allowed for adequate oversight of company rates?
No.
All right, thank you. Mr. Commissioner, did you have any questions?
No.
All right, thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate you very much. Next, I would like to call forward Scott Hummel, who is the Vice President of the Michigan Association of Insurance Agents. The Michigan Association of Insurance Agents is the largest association in Michigan for the independent insurance agent. They represent approximately 1,100 agencies and 10,000 industry employees. I've met with Mr. Hummel and with the CEO, Robert Pierce, of the organization in my office, and I know they do a big job and a great job, frankly. And in many respects, the agents are the ones who are closest to the consumer in terms of explaining what the policy all means. So I'm thrilled that you're here, and with that, it's your turn. You did also. You served in the legislature for did you not?
Yes, I did.
You did.
And I'll mention that when I go through.
What's that?
I'll mention that when we get to deregulation.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you. And good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Hollowell, to be here, and Mr. Commissioner, thank you much. My comments will be brief. As a matter of background, Mr. Hollowell touched on it briefly, but I just wanted to reiterate that the Michigan Association of Insurance Agents, or MAIA, is a statewide trade association of over 1,000 independent insurance agencies and their 10,000 employees and agents. Our members are independently owned small businesses that offer a variety of insurance and financial services and, generally speaking, represent more than one insurance company. Although our members act as distributors of insurance products offered by a multitude of companies, independent agents will, when a loss occurs, stand with a client or insurance consumer and advocate on their behalf until the claim is settled. Mr. Hollowell, you had 2 questions. I'd actually like to add a third there because I know it's on your website, and we had discussed it too regarding service as well as affordability. You had some concerns about the service that insurance consumers deal with. So if you'll allow me that privilege, I'd appreciate a short time to deal with that as well.
Absolutely.
Question 1 is auto insurance affordable? MEI believes that must be addressed not solely related to actual premium costs for insurance consumers, but also to the level of benefits received. The number of uninsured in the market and the number of competitors in the marketplace may also be indicators of affordability or the lack thereof. Under benefits, Michigan's auto no-fault law, Michigan drivers and passengers have some of the most comprehensive protections offered in the country in the event of automobile-related injuries received in an accident. Unlimited personal injury protection provides medical care and covers health-related expenses until the injured party recovers, or for their entire life if they were tragically never to recover fully from their injuries. No other state requires unlimited medical benefits in such instances. No other state, Michigan only. With the increasing cost of health care-related expenses that have far outpaced the rate of inflation, it's a wonder that Michigan doesn't rank higher in the state combined average premiums in the 50 states. As the previous gentleman testified, Michigan ranks 13 in that category. And then if I might digress just a moment on benefits, I know there are some who would like to address affordability issues by changing the unlimited medical benefit under no fault. Our members have one anecdotal story after another regarding PIP benefits and what that has done for families and for individuals who've been injured in automobile accidents. One of them writes, when Michigan no fault was born, a lot of insurance agents doubted that it was a good idea. I was one of them, and I campaigned hard to defeat it. I lost, no fault became law, and I settled in to deal with it. Less than a week later, after no fault went into effect, one of my clients was driving with his family, and their car was struck head-on by a young, non-resident, drunk, and uninsured driver. All 4 members of the family spent months in the hospital recovering from terrible injuries. Michigan's no fault paid the entire medical bill plus lost wage benefits for both the husband and the wife. Was Michigan no fault with unlimited medical a good idea? Well, let's put it this way. The gentleman I'm quoting here, had sold them a maximum available medical payments $5,000 per person. They had no health insurance, and then the medical bills would have ruined them financially. Needless to say, I was and remain convinced that Michigan No Fault, with its unlimited medical benefits, is the best thing since sliced bread, unquote. The number of insured in the marketplace might also be an indicator of affordability. Michigan law mandates that drivers must have automobile insurance, with penalties assessed if one does not have any auto insurance. One might interpret that if there are a large number of uninsured in the state or in any one area that are willing to risk exposure to both violation of state law and personal loss, that might be reflective of affordability concerns. However, it might also indicate the possible lack of ability by law enforcement officials to enforce this state law. Some estimates, as previously mentioned, show that the state level of uninsured may be as high as 17%. And again, that is an estimate. And some urban areas in Michigan may exceed 50% of those driving without insurance coverage. But this is not out of line with the 17% is not out of line with other states. A lack of competitors in the state or a particular region may be an indicator of affordability. With 169 domestic insurers and over 1,000 foreign or out-of-state insurance companies operating in Michigan, one can probably conclude fairly reasonably that there is a very competitive marketplace in Michigan that does lead to lower costs or contained costs for consumers. Again, anecdotally, many agents have indicated that their workload has increased significantly in the last 2 years as they have fought to retain existing customers who are being lured elsewhere by lower premiums. That is reflective of a competitive economy or a competitive marketplace. However, in a state where competition appears to be the rule, if there are some areas of the state where we see a dearth of company activity, it may be indicative of the high cost of doing business in those areas. We have to ask the question as to what the underlying cost factors are making it difficult to do business in those areas. We have to be honest in admitting that businesses, even insurance companies, are in the business to make money, and they will go where there's an opportunity to make money. If they don't, there's reasons they don't, and we have to be willing to address those reasons. In a 2005 EPIC MRA statewide poll of Michigan voters on insurance-related issues, respondents indicated that the three top reasons consumers believe insurance costs are rising faster than the rate of inflation are: 1, the rising cost of health care; 2, fraudulent claim by consumers; and 3, frivolous lawsuits. The second question, I will substitute here maybe 1A instead of question 2, is the idea of service, as mentioned on your website, Mr. Hollowell. And the question I ask is, service in the insurance industry deficient in relation to responding to consumer needs? If that question is asked, one would assume that if that's the case, the auto insurance-related complaints should be on the rise, or there would be a significant increase in the proportion to overall complaints. OFER's website shows statistics that would say the opposite. The total number of complaints in general is decreasing in relation to auto insurance, and auto insurance-related complaints is trending downward both on an actual basis and as a percentage of the total number of complaints. In addition, MAIA did, as mentioned before, the 2005 EPIC MRA study. The results showed that in response to the question, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the level of service you received from your independent insurance agent, 72% of the respondents indicated they were very satisfied, and another 24% replied they were somewhat satisfied. Thus, 96% of the respondents in this survey indicated that they were either very or somewhat satisfied with the level of service they were receiving from independent insurance agents. Now I'll put my tongue in cheek and say if we had more independent insurance agents, we might not have any complaints, but anyway. From our perspective, MEI will work toward a 100% goal of customer satisfaction, but given the information we have, we can't see where this is an issue demanding the same level of scrutiny as others that the insurance advocate is currently trying to address. Question number 3, has deregulation allowed for adequate oversight of company rates and by OFER and the legislature? I can't speak for OFER. I'll let them speak for themselves. But I'll take as mentioned previously, I was a former legislator, and I'll take my MAI hat off for a minute and mention my experience there. The legislature has and always will have oversight over even this area of insurance. They can call a committee hearing, they can have insurance companies in, they can talk about rates, they can do something about rates. The question is whether the legislature takes the opportunity to perform that oversight function. And it is my opinion, as a former legislator, that term limits has hindered the oversight function of the legislature in general, because the high turnover rate with legislators requires continual training and learning of the legislative role. And there is a certain amount of expertise that is required in each subject that the legislators deal with, especially regarding insurance. It's a very complex issue. You saw some of the definitions up there. The code is very lengthy, and it takes time to become that expert. With only 6 years in the legislature as a representative, 8 as a senator, there's not a lot of time to get up to speed, and once you do, you don't have a lot of time left for oversight issues. But that is there, and it is available. To give you an example, it was previously mentioned about the subject of credit history. I'll give you an example because I was personally involved in that. There was a subcommittee that dealt with the issue of credit scoring. That subcommittee and the stakeholders in the issue of credit scoring, the insurance companies, the insurance agents, the legislators, OFIS at the time, now OFER staff, were involved in looking at that issue because Michigan has no regulations with regard of use of credit-based insurance scores. But we spent probably a time of 3 or 4 months going through legislation to regulate that particular use of credit scores. There are over half of the other states do have some type of regulation. At the end of those 4 months, we had a bill that was not everybody bought into everything in the bill, but it was quite a compromise to where we had begun. And shortly thereafter, the insurance commissioner at the time, not Mr. Ross, a different insurance commissioner, chose to take a different tack, which is okay. Commissioner Waters had the privilege of doing that. However, because of that different tack that the previous commissioner took, the insurance companies, it was an outright ban on the use of insurance-based or credit-based insurance scores. The issue went to the courts, and it is still in the courts. And so I use that example as the fact that the legislature has tried in the past for oversight issues, even with respect to credit scoring, but has not always been successful because of other competing interests. I would also mention with regard to regulation or deregulation and oversight, MAA often takes issues in the marketplace to OFER directly regarding compliance concerns. The recent bulletin regarding certificates of insurance that the commissioner issued is one example. We also do this with issues brought to our attention by either many agents, even one agent. Oftentimes I'll call off OFER, and to give you another example, there was a concern on one agent regarding cost estimate accuracy when somebody is estimating or offering you a quote. Their concern was that not all agents were necessarily offering a accurate quote for replacement costs. But in checking with OFER, they had not had any complaints to that regard, and so but that was one way to oversee the process of the industry and the work of agents out there. In conclusion, Mr. Hollowell and Insurance Commissioner, MAI looks forward to continuing to work with you and the legislature to provide the consumers of Michigan the best possible protections. And I would be happy to answer the same questions you had before. As I expect they will.
Thank you, Mr. Hummel. Mr. Insurance Commissioner, do you have any questions?
Scott, I heard your discussion about the proposal to reduce benefits or to offer PIP choice. I didn't catch the position, though. Is MAA taking a formal position on it?
Yes, we're opposed to that.
Thank you.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you as well. The other question on credit scoring: should credit scoring be? Should companies be allowed to use it?
MEI believes that credit scoring or the use of credit-based insurance scores is an accurate predictor of risk. Is an accurate predictor of risk. We believe it's a valuable tool in the arsenal to allocate costs for insurance companies. However, we also believe that Michigan needs some regulation regarding the use of credit scores.
Simple question. What if I didn't graduate from high school? What does that have to do with my driving, and why should that impact my premium?
That may be one part of the underwriting tools or underwriting criteria that a company uses, Mr. Hollowell.
Well, I'm just trying to get at, why should we allow that to be a factor? Let's take another factor. If I'm a machinist versus if I'm a pharmacist, why should that impact the amount that I would pay by premium?
I would encourage you to ask the insurance companies about that.
So
they're the ones that are using it. Well, again, we're the distributors of the product.
Do you think they should? In your opinion, you've been around for a long time. You said you were a legislator.
Mm-hmm. Let's put it this way. There are various tools that the insurance companies use to underwrite. The purpose of insurance is to evaluate risk and to allocate the cost of that over the population.
Yes.
There must be some legitimate reasons. I don't know what those are off the top of my head, Mr. Hollowell, regarding why they would use education or some other criteria.
What about eye color? What if statistically they could show that green-eyed individuals were better risks than blue-eyed individuals?
Well, let me give you an example.
I'm just saying.
No, in response to your line of questioning, if I might.
Okay.
My son, who is 17, will pay a much higher rate than myself, even though.
That's different.
Why is that different?
That's different because the age of the driver has something to do with the skill and the operation of the vehicle. What I'm talking about is credit history and occupation. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that has to do with the operation of the vehicle.
Well, I believe
my daughter's a new driver too. She's 18, and I know that I'm a better driver than she is. That's a legitimate factor. I'm just saying, with the job that I have, why isn't that any different than eye color?
I don't know. Well, eye color, you don't have no control over eye color. You do have control over your educational level. You have control over your income.
Do you have full control over your educational level?
I don't think there's any restrictions to how far a person can go if they want to.
What happens if the factory closes and you lose your job and all of a sudden you find yourself behind in paying your bills?
That's why MAI has endorsed or has supported some regulations regarding the use of credit-based insurance scores, because one of the concerns that we have, what about a person with no credit or a thin file? Why should they be penalized? We don't think they should be penalized.
What about some old-timers that believe that they want to put the money under the mattress, and some do?
And again,
if I could, and some of them don't have bank accounts, and therefore have no credit history, and they call us, and they say, I have a terrible credit history score, but I pay my bills on time.
And again, that's some of the regulations that we've been pushing in the legislature that have not gone anywhere because of other varying factors outside of our control. OFER's decision to ban the use, the decision by the companies to take it into the courts. But that was one of the factors that we put in that legislation, was to say if you don't have any credit, if you don't have any bank accounts, that should not count against you in the use of credit scores.
Thank you. Yeah. I think we're gonna have this as an orderly proceeding.
I would love to address identity theft. That was not in the current legislation that's out there, but it could easily be added as an issue. I mean, that would be a legitimate reason why somebody shouldn't be penalized if they've had their identity stolen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for the job that you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am going to take a prerogative for one. Oh, is this information that we could enter into the record? Mm-hmm. Good. Madam Clerk, could you have this marked? Can I recall just for just 1 second, Mr. Bernbaum. Are you still here, Mr.? Yes. I have one question for you. It was touched on by Mr. Hummel. What is your view about, there is some discussion going on about PIP choice is what it's called, and that is where there would be a limitation on benefits, medical benefits, with respect to health care coverage and that health care coverage option. Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, I have an opinion. I think it's a really bad idea.
And why?
Well, basically what the no-fault coverage provides is coverage in the event of a catastrophic event, which is the whole purpose of insurance, that in the event of some kind of catastrophic event, you're not wiped out, whether it's your home being destroyed, whether you being physically damaged. That's what insurance is all about. And the idea for this limited coverage option is somehow, it seems to be predicated on this idea that, first of all, the current coverage is some kind of luxury. It's a real premium. It's not. It's the coverage that you would expect from insurance, number one. Number two, there also seems to be this idea that consumers should be allowed to choose their coverage level. Well, consumers obviously should have choice when it's meaningful choice. But, what consumer knows that whether they're going to be in a catastrophic accident or not? I mean, the idea that any consumer can meaningfully have choice about the amount of catastrophic coverage they have for something like this makes no sense to me. What is really going to happen is you're going to get a two-tier insurance system. The affluent are going to be able to afford the coverage that people expect, and the middle class is basically going to get inadequate coverage. So I don't, on a policy basis, it doesn't make any sense to me. The arguments for it don't hold any water, and the idea that there's going to be this great savings doesn't make any sense either, because you heard in the numbers that I quoted that the amount that Michiganians pay for liability isn't near the top, whereas overall it's close to the top, but it's not because of the liability coverages. So no fault is not the driver of the affordability issues that are going on. The problems with affordability are being driven by other things and not by no fault.
Thank you. All right, now we do have your testimony cards. Do we have our new representative-elect here? Awesome. Great. Can you guys put your hands together for Representative-elect Roy Schmidt? Okay. All right.
Hi, everybody. Apologize for being late.
One thing I was kind of looking a little bit at your background, Mr. Representative-elect, and one quote stood out to me. I work to get things to yes. I like that.
Thank you.
You said that in an interview, and that really impressed me, and have been an advocate for consumers, so thank you. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to, we've got some individuals who would like to testify. If you would, that microphone over there is, if you just come to that microphone, please say your name slowly so that our court reporter can get it, and spell it so that our court reporter can really get it. Is that right, Madam Court Reporter? Okay. All right. So the first one is Robert Kretsch, M.D. Mr. Kretsch. And keep it to around 3 minutes. We're doing okay, but keep it to...
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Is this working all right? Appreciate the time allowing me to testify. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives, I won't go through all your titles again. I am Dr. Robert Kreitsch. It's K-R-E-I-T-S-C-H. I grew up in the Detroit area, lived in Michigan all my life, trained in my medical training in Michigan, practiced as a rehabilitation specialist for over 30 years now in West Michigan. I take care of many people that have been in catastrophic injuries. Probably 90% of what I do over the last 25 years or so is work with people that have had serious brain injuries. And a couple of my partners do that almost totally with children and adolescents with catastrophic injuries. There's at least 4 or 5 other specialists right in Kent County alone that do all of this as well as rehabilitation specialists. I've served on National Commission on Accreditation of Rehab Facilities nationally and held other positions. I won't go into all of that. I agree with much of what's been said here tonight and appreciate learning. You can always learn by listening. That factory worker in Grand Rapids that pays 2 or 3 times more for insurance than that Bloomfield Hills physician that Mr. Holloway mentioned, that doctor must not have a family with a driving record like mine, or maybe it's the credit record, I don't know, but I've learned quite a bit. I want to focus on the affordability and the cost and the service. The affordability we've just learned is incomprehensible. I mean, the definition's 400 words. I mean, what do you do with that? How do you define that? I mean, yes, we wouldn't disagree that we're expensive on average compared with the rest of the country, not the highest as we've heard, but $925 versus $817. That's $108 a year more on average. Now that's $9 a month on your premium. Now for that $9 a month, I would like to focus on the PIP, the choice that's been proposed and I think backed by the auto insurers. They've proposed, I believe, some caps, and this isn't the first time. I believe I'm old enough, some of you remember that these things have been voted down in past elections, past referendums.
If I could hold you, Doctor. So when you say PIP again, you mean personal injury protection?
Personal injury protection for the unlimited medical benefits. These days, unless you've had someone in a catastrophic injury, a close friend or family member, you don't realize until you're there that the $50,000 cap on benefits, which is one of the possible proposal, or $100,000, or even $200,000, or $250,000, 4 or 5 days in the ICU today in a modern trauma center, that $50,000 can be used. That can be gone in the first week. Many of our survivors are 3 to 6 weeks in an ICU. That can be $250,000 right there. And spinal cord injuries and brain injuries do not recover like broken bones or punctured lungs or torn arteries. The surgeons do tremendous jobs these days. Many people survive that would not have survived when I started my medical training. The trauma systems, the technology, the expertise, tremendous teams. But after you get out of the ICU, that's just the beginning. Rehabilitation hospital after that for many people for just a month or less, that's another 50 or 60 grand. And that's just the beginning. Many people beyond that, not like many of our survivors here who have lifetime needs, as you see and maybe we'll hear testify. I'm talking about the 10 or 20 times as many as the people that are needing lifetime nursing care or in a wheelchair lifetime or cannot be employed again, will never drive again. For every one of those, there's 10 or 20 times that many that have mild or moderate brain injuries that are walking, talking, dressing themselves, getting up every day, but still cannot return to school and be successful, cannot be employed competitively, cannot pay taxes, maybe cannot drive, and yet some can, but it may take months and years of services, professional rehabilitation, evaluations, testing, training, placement, counseling. It goes on. And that's why having the choice of limiting your medical benefits to just $50,000 or $100,000 or even more than that seems reasonable to save a few dollars on your premium. But what is going to happen is that many, many of those people, like the people I see from assaults, drug abuses, strokes, drownings, and all the other type of catastrophic injuries that are not auto-covered often will end up with life care. Their spouse or their parent has to stop working, has to stay at home to supervise them or care for them. Medicaid does not pay for in-home nursing around the clock 7 days a week. It pays for some medical expenses. The rehabilitation and the assisted living, those things are extremely limited once you get out to that point and you're stable. That destroys families economically. To even qualify for Medicaid, they have to sell virtually everything. And the expertise of the teams that care for people with the auto injuries has done a tremendous amount to improve quality of care in our state. And not only the victims or the survivors will often be unemployed for many, many months or years or for life, but the people in the industries that take care of these people with the no-fault benefits also may be out of work. You're talking about hundreds and thousands in some instances for programs that have developed to do this kind of care that will not be there if the PIP is not there. Ultimately, a lot of the walking, talking disabled, too, will increase the burden on the public cost in court systems, law enforcement, drug and alcohol abuse counseling and programs, psychiatric admissions. For many people with more physical limitations, without excellent care, they will return with more complications and have more hospitalizations and in general, a lower quality of life for themselves and their families. I can go on and on and on and give you lots of examples, but I think we'll cut it short. I did have one comment on something Scott said about the legislature, the legislators, the representatives do have a tough job, and it takes a lot of experience. It takes time to get up to speed and training, but I wonder when you now you educate a driver these days, and the driver's training laws, I think, have come a long ways. They're stopping a lot of accidents by the graduated method we have now. You don't license a driver until you think he's qualified to drive. You don't want a surgeon going inside your body or inside your head until you believe he's trained and qualified to do that. You don't want a plumber even fixing something in your house unless he's a qualified plumber. And they have training programs for these people. They have apprenticeships in all these fields. I kind of wonder, do our legislators have to get on-the-job training when they get there in Lansing, or shouldn't we demand the same standards? That was in reference to the term limits. But I'll stop with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions and give some other folks a chance.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Next, I will hear from Eileen. I think it's Ikeus. Ikeens. Eileen Ikeens of Reed City.
Thank you. My name is Eileen Ikens, Ileneikens. I'm here on behalf of my son Eric to testify about the benefits that he's received as a result of the no-fault insurance. We believe that the rates are affordable when one considers what it does for survivors and what the alternatives would be without it. Eric was 11 years old when struck by a car in 1983. He sustained a significant closed head injury. That injury left Eric with quadriplegia, diffuse brain injury, and seizures. He is unable to care for himself and cannot speak, but he is very alert to his environment and to his family. The PIP benefits allow Eric to live at home, where he receives excellent care through Munson Home Services, as well as enjoys family life. He has a caregiver with him 24 hours a day to provide the level of care that his condition requires. These caregivers have in fact become a very significant part of Eric's life, having developed an excellent rapport with Eric. The PIP benefits have provided long-term physical, occupational, and speech therapy. These therapies have, to a large degree, been responsible for Eric's to realize the degree of recovery he has accomplished. We are still seeing him make progress both physically and cognitively. At this point, Eric is able to volunteer weekly at a greenhouse at Ferris State University. He bowls weekly with a friend using a bowling ramp. This is a very important social outing for Eric. He attends church regularly with his family and after tutoring understands and participates in the sacraments. He enjoys going to movies accompanied by his caregiver. Eric swims twice a week with a personal trainer and benefits a great deal from the warm water therapy. With the help of a caregiver, Eric is able to join us on family vacations. In short, his quality of life far exceeds what he would have if forced to live in a nursing home. PIP benefits allowed us to modify our home so that it is accessible to Eric and still provides him with a degree of privacy. It has purchased the equipment necessary for Eric's daily living. Examples are electric wheelchair van and lift, braces and exercise equipment as recommended by Eric's physiatrist. Seizure medicines and medical supplies are also provided. His medications alone run $1,200 to $1,500 a month. Early on, following Eric's accident, we were advised to place Eric in a nursing home. We searched the state for a program that would aggressively address coma arousal and begin physical therapy to prevent contractures. There were none due to his length of coma and his age. We did, however, find one at Children's Rehab Hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Eric was there for 2 years and made excellent progress prior to being discharged home. Since that time, Pennsylvania has voted out their no-fault, and now that very good program no longer exists. Without no-fault benefits as they stand, our family would have been driven into poverty. We would have had no choice but to place Eric in a nursing home. I have been a registered nurse for 38 years and can attest to the fact that the level of care in nursing homes would be far inferior to the care that we've been able to provide for Eric at home. Nursing homes are not staffed or equipped to give this level of care due to reimbursement issues. Without the level of care Eric has received, he quite likely would have been hospitalized numerous times due to skin breakdown, urinary tract infections, and respiratory infections. These conditions are more expensive to treat than they are to prevent. In addition, nursing home costs would exceed that of home care and would not provide community involvement that Eric so enjoys. In the 25 years since Eric's accident, he has been hospitalized once due to seizure activity. Other than that, he has not been hospitalized other than for surgeries. We have the best insurance coverage in the country. Why lower that standard and in turn force people onto our already overburdened Medicaid system? Suggestions for possibly lowering insurance premiums would include education of agents on no-fault benefits. Our experience has been that they are not knowledgeable of them to a large degree. Secondly, require the insurance companies to honor their contracts on no-fault benefits without forcing clients to take them to court to receive proper reimbursement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Steve Kaufman of Granville. He's coming.
Stefan.
And again, give your name and please spell it.
My name is Stephen B. Kaufman, Kauffman. I'd like to thank Mr. Hallwell and the Commissioner and Representative-elect Smith for holding this hearing. This will be brief, and I'm going to read it to make it brief, so there won't be a lot of uhs and you knows in there. The two questions posed: is Michigan auto insurance rates affordable, and has Michigan deregulation of the insurance industry allowed for adequate oversight of auto rates? This begs the question: if the rates are affordable, then why is the need for oversight? And if the rates are unaffordable, then why the need for deregulation? The point being, deregulation, in my opinion, does not serve the citizenry of Michigan. One only needs to examine the Wall Street debacle of deregulation to recognize the harm. Regulation is a construct that enables a fairness of equality that would benefit all the people of our state. During these times of economic uncertainty, families are looking for ways to cut costs. For some, auto insurance rates are acceptable and affordable, but for others, the costs can be and usually are devastating. One thing for certain is the Michigan catastrophic benefit. That should never, and I emphasize, should never be open for discussion as to reducing rates for affordability purposes. The amount of $104.58 a year per vehicle is such a small price to pay for the tremendous dividends received for a person's quality of life. Let me pose an example here. My friend's son, Tyler, when 17 years old, was involved in a horrific automobile accident, rendering him quadriplegia. That same summer, a classmate of Tyler's dove into a shallow area of Lake Michigan, rendering him quadriplegia. Although the accidents were different, each suffered the same injuries. Because Tyler's accident involved a vehicle, he was eligible for the Michigan catastrophic claim. For those who do not know or understand the MCC, to simplify, Tyler has 24/7 care. His house, inside and out, is handicap accessible, a reconfigured van for transportation, and a puff wheelchair, while his classmate receives none of these previously mentioned. It should be noted that all this is paid by your insurance. The burden is also lifted financially and emotionally from the families. The citizenry of Michigan can rest assured that when driving a vehicle, they will be covered under the Michigan Catastrophic Program. Don't ever believe, and I'll say this again, do not ever believe that a life-altering event can never happen to you. And thus, I, we, you, them can save $104.58 a year from your insurance premiums. Whatever the decision that comes forth through this initiative, the sense of purpose and compassion should and must not be ignored with the intentions of saving a few pennies at the expense of the Michigan Catastrophic Benefit Program. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
And now we'll hear from Joanne Pace of Bel Air, Michigan. Oh, hi, Joe. Take your time. And again, please give your full name and spell it.
Sure. My name is Joanne Pace, P-A-C-E. I can't speak to deregulation issues. In terms of cost, when I'm employed, it's quite manageable. I buy insurance for protection against catastrophic loss, period. But I'd like to share my story, our story. On October 25th, 2002, while running an errand to a local Rite Aid in Caledonia Township, my daughter Kelly was in a devastating auto accident. EMTs at the scene executed the necessary life-saving procedures, and once transported to the Spectrum Trauma 1 unit in Grand Rapids, she underwent neurosurgery to deal with excessive bleeding in her brain and then was placed on life support fighting for her life. She had suffered a severe TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and remained in a coma, also known as a vegetative state, for several weeks. Although somewhat familiar with various aspects of the brain up to that point, I had never heard of TBI, nor did I fully comprehend what Michigan No Fault provided until the long journey of her recovery and rehabilitation began to unfold. Once medically stable, Kelly was transferred to a subacute facility where specialized in aggressive therapies helped her wake up. To me, this is the place where miracles happen. From a parent's perspective, once immersed, and maybe a better word is submerged, in the world of TBI focuses on your child or loved one, period. Learning and thinking about TBI, which requires a whole new technical jargon, participating in the rehabilitation process, and advocating on behalf of someone who is unable to speak for themselves becomes a full-time mission. Today, almost 6 years later, Kelly is now in assisted living, contributing her services as a volunteer paraprofessional, working with an early childhood special education program in the Grand Rapids public school system. Her progress and quality of life is a direct result of the medical and therapeutic resources available through brain rehabilitation programs in West Michigan, funded by Michigan No Fault. And of course, she is not alone. A film documentary produced right here in West Michigan follows 6 young people who suffered severe TBI and auto accidents and today have reinvented themselves with a sense of dignity and purpose. And 2 of them are sitting right over there. One's an artist, and one is just a wonderful young woman. Do you want to stand up, Adara and Amber? It's a very poignant film documentary. As educated and responsible drivers, most of us can never imagine the extreme forces that can impact the human body in less than a second that have severe and profound consequences in how we define ourselves and our future. My experience with traumatic brain injury has changed everything. And unlike other states, because of No Fault, Michigan residents are protected because they are able to obtain appropriate and complete medical services for auto-related injuries with the goal of becoming whole and productive again. To see how ineffectively other states deal with TBI, just read a few chapters from a recent book which was on the New York Times bestsellers list entitled Head Cases by Michael Paul Mason. The vast majority of people... Head Cases by Michael Paul Mason. I only got halfway through the book. It's too sad. The vast majority of people will never experience a catastrophic injury, thank God. But for those who do, Michigan has a system that works for those who need it. Thank you for taking the time to listen.
Ms. Pace, thank you so much. Did you say that that documentary was produced here in Grand Rapids?
Right here in Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay.
With the support of Hope Network, Spectrum, and Mary Freebed. It was a cooperative, collaborative, wonderful venture.
If you don't mind, if you could give a copy of that to the court, to the hearings reporter, and I'd like to have that entered into the record.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's our
Thank
pleasure.
You so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to hear from John Prosser. John Prosser.
Can I stand next to you? All right, great.
And again, could you give your full name and spell it, please?
Yes, my name is John Gwynne, Gwynne, Prosser, Prosser, the second. Thank you, Mr. Hollowell, for holding these hearings. Mr. Ross, Mr. Schmidt, thank you for being here. As I indicated, my name is John Prosser, and for the past 15 years, I have been the vice president of Health Partners. Health Partners is an in-home nursing company that provides care for citizens that are brain injured and or spinal cord injured in automobile accidents. Mr. Hollowell, I'm very comforted to know that there is an insurance advocate looking over the insurance companies and their business practices. It has been a long time coming. I'm confident that when the bright light of your oversight shines on the insurance industry here in Michigan, we will be able to stabilize the system and create regulatory reforms to protect Michigan citizens, including the lowering of excessive automobile insurance rates. Presently, Health Partners employs hundreds of employees. Our headquarters office is in Southfield, Michigan. It is our largest office. Many of our employees have complained to us about the exorbitant rates that they suffer because they live in the city of Detroit. It's truly a personal thing for us. I believe that many of Michigan citizens are unfairly burdened with paying extraordinary automobile insurance rates. As I'm sure you are aware, Michigan rates have risen a whopping 69% since 1989, which is in fact the highest rate of increase in the nation. This has happened at the same time that our automobile insurance industry is enjoying great prosperity and record profits. I believe the current conditions have made automobile insurance unaffordable for far too many citizens in Michigan, and clearly this circumstance is unacceptable. I believe that the deregulation of the insurance industry has eliminated adequate oversight of the automobile insurance companies in general, and specifically their application of insurance rates, as well as their business practices related to honoring the contracts that they have with their insureds. As to why I believe Michigan no-fault automobile insurance is important, and personal injury protection benefits specifically, let us start with the fact that the Michigan law is unique in all the nation. Michigan has a very special catastrophic fund, which is funded by drivers for drivers. This fund was created by a visionary legislature that understood that some of Michigan's citizens would suffer catastrophic injuries and they would need persistent, comprehensive, and compassionate medical benefits. Our law, our insurance law, was conceived for citizens. In fact, in every other state in America, if you suffer a catastrophic injury in an automobile accident, you will go bankrupt due to medical bills. And then you will fall to Medicaid for medical services. And sadly, those services and benefit levels are wholly inadequate compared to the very real needs of our fellow Americans. In addition, Medicaid continues to grow at an annual rate of 8% and is breaking the bank of every state budget. Michigan spends over $8 billion on Medicaid costs presently, Florida over $16 billion, California $35 billion, and New York State takes the cake with $48 billion. Furthermore, with respect to Michigan, Governor Granholm has just announced the need to trim our state budget by as much as $900 million, with some of that coming out of the Medicaid budget. Michigan no-fault automobile insurance, personal injury protection benefits, is important because it creates a reservoir of resource for the care, the recovery, and the rehabilitation of citizens when they are injured. It is also important because it creates the finest win-win dynamic possible for citizens when there is proper oversight of the insurance industry. Our law here in Michigan honors citizens with unlimited medical benefits, including aggressive and long-term rehabilitation services, including many forms of therapies. It also includes the 24-hour in-home nursing care where patients can best be supported by the comfort of familiar surroundings and their loved ones. Our insurance scheme is significant because it is funded by drivers for drivers. Our law caps costs for insurance companies, virtually guaranteeing their business success and providing Michigan insurance companies with some of the largest and most significant profitability of any insurance companies in America. Our system prevents citizens from filing bankruptcy due to medical bills and prevents them from falling to Medicaid and the inadequate medical benefits that would provide them. This fact alone saves our state hundreds of millions of dollars in costs it would otherwise assume. Our insurance law is important because our Michigan Catastrophic Claim Fund is funded by drivers for drivers and has been evaluated by our actuaries to need a smaller annual assessment fee due to their projection of smaller costs into the future. Our fund is sacrosanct for drivers who have and those who may sustain catastrophic injuries. It is unique in all the nation. I believe the best way to evaluate why personal injury protection benefits are important is to imagine that you or someone you love is the victim of a catastrophic injury due to an automobile accident. Imagine a brain injury or a spinal cord injury happening to you. This law was conceived for Michigan citizens by their visionary legislature to protect them and provide for them comprehensively if they should ever need it. I'm confident that the Office of the Insurance Advocate, and you specifically, Mr. Hollowell, will bring about the positive change necessary to reduce excessive rates and insist that insurance companies who do business at the pleasure of the law will honor and show respect to Michigan citizens. I fear that if the practice of excessive insurance rates is not abated, Michigan families who cannot afford those rates will fall to Medicaid after an automobile accident, which will essentially become a new tax on all citizens and a cost shift by insurance companies. I believe that circumstance is intolerable. Given that PIP is only 15% of an automobile insurance policy, I believe there should never be allowed an erosion of the benefits due to fee schedules nor gradations of catastrophic coverage. I believe that those very ideas put forth by the insurance industry are a betrayal of the very customers that generate their enormous profits. I'm very optimistic now that Michigan has an insurance advocate, and I believe that now is a great time to tighten the reins on runaway insurance companies and shine the bright light of oversight and strengthen regulations for the industry as a whole. Please insist that insurance companies act honorably and respectfully towards Michigan citizens. Thank you.
Now I'd like to hear from Kelly Syverson of Grand Rapids. Kelly Syverson? Hey, Kelly.
Hello.
Can somebody adjust the mic?
Let's see. Sorry. Hello.
Kelly, also, could you say your name and spell it, please?
My name is Kelly Syverson, Kelley, Syverson, S-Y, V as in Victor, E-R-S-O-N. And I was in a car accident on October 25th, 2002, and I sustained a serious closed head injury and have been fortunate to have the life-saving resources that Michigan's Auto No Fault provides. Without those resources that I have had, I would not be anywhere near the person that I am today. And on October 25th, 2002, I lost my ability to choose. I did not choose to be involved in a life-changing accident, but I lost choices in where I work, where I live, and everything was, every choice I had was evaporated. And I do not even remember the accident. But I have shared with you what I lost on October 25th, 2002, which was freedom to choose for myself these things that others my age look forward to: careers, relationships, jobs, marriage, homes, raising families. Yet on October 24th, 2008, exactly 6 years after my accident, I was able to initiate a meeting that may enable me to choose my next residential option. And this may sound trivial and small to all of you, but for me, having the ability to direct my own life is monumental. This has only been made possible because of the efforts of my medical team and rehabilitation team that have helped restore me into some sense of, to restore my mind, body, and soul into some sense of worthwhile.
And on behalf of the state, I also want to just thank you for your courage and for helping us with understanding what we're dealing with. Thank you. Now I'd like to hear from, I think it's Jackie Wondolowski. Jackie Wondolowski? Did I say that right? Okay. And Ms. Wondolowski, if you again would spell your name, say it and spell your name, please.
Sure. First name is Jackie, Jackie. Last name Wondolowski, Wondolowski.
Would you point the microphone a little bit more towards your face?
Okay, better? Thank you very much for having this hearing this afternoon and for all the work that you're all doing. And I've been involved in spinal cord injury care for nearly 19 years, so I've seen, as a care provider, the devastating effects of spinal cord injuries. And I wanted to just share some real numbers with all of you today. About 42% of all spinal cord injuries are caused by way of motor vehicle accidents. And there are about 40 injuries per 1 million for 1 million population per year in the United States. So that's about 12,000 injuries per year. And probably upwards about 250 to 300,000 people living with spinal cord injury. Depending on the level of injury, what we're looking at in terms of costs, and I'll give you this information. This is from the latest spinal cord injury facts and figures that are on the website, is that in the first year of injury, depending upon your level of injury, the costs will be anywhere from just above $200,000 to just under $1 million, and that's just for your first year of injury. For your lifetime, and again, depending upon the severity of the injury, you will incur $500,000 to several $1 million of lifetime medical costs. And this shows a couple of things. It shows that we really want to work to keep our auto insurance rates affordable so that people continue to purchase auto insurance. Because if they don't purchase auto insurance and they are, especially if they're at fault in the accident and they don't have the coverage, they need the medical care, and providers still continue to provide them medical care, but then what happens to individuals is that they spend all of their money. Not many of us have several $1 million to pay out of pocket for medical costs. And so then what happens is they spend down their assets and they apply for Michigan Medicaid. And as you know, our state is really hurting, and we can't afford to be the insurer for individuals. So I'll hand off my paper with all the facts and figures, and I thank you for your time today.
And if our hearings clerk would make sure that that is marked as an exhibit and entered into the record. Next, we got about 10 minutes to go, so we're going to try to get through as many as we can. James Denule. Did I say that right? I did? Oh, close. Okay. From Wyoming.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Denule, please give us your name and if you would spell it out.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is James Denial, spelled D-E-N, capital U-Y-L. I just have a short comment that with a tight economy, people are forced to choose between housing costs, groceries, and prescriptions, and car insurance. Anything that can be done to keep our rates low is crucial to the families of Michigan. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mary Kay Hood. Hood. All right. Mary Kay Hood.
Can that lean over here? Can you hear me up there? Sure, my name is Mary Kay Hood. It's H-O-O-D, small H-O-O-D. All one word, and it's Mary and a K period is my first name. I am a wife, a stepmother, a social worker, a volunteer, and a quadriplegic as a result of a 1980 automobile accident. At the time that I was injured, I spent 3 months in the hospital at Blodgett Hospital and 3 months in a hospital in Denver that was a rehab hospital. I've had several other lengthy stays in the hospital with challenges that because of my injury. I have a C4-5 spinal cord injury resulting in paralysis and quadriplegia. I'm not here today to tell you about the frustrations of my life, which are many. I could go on and on and on. But I am here today to talk about the service part of the Michigan no-fault law. I feel that this law has afforded me a situation where I feel very stable in my life. I know that my many insurance or many medical bills are going to be covered. I've been, as I said, injured since 1980. I was 27 years old at the time. So next year it'll be 29 years. More than half of my life I've been a wheelchair user and a quadriplegic. But in spite of what hand was dealt me, I was able to go back to college, get a second degree, and I'm a social worker. I did join the workforce again, went back to work for 8 years, and through that was able to join a lot of boards, do a lot of community service. I started a program in Grand Rapids where we feed undernourished children a sack supper. And so despite my disability, I have been able to lead a normal life, and I attribute that to the no-fault law. I attribute to the fact that I know that I was going to be taken care of, the fact that I can live in my own home, the fact that I have wonderful attendants like Megan to hold this for me today so I can come here today. And I want to go back and thank you guys so much for your time. I was glad to be more educated about the history of the no-fault law and the economists and the insurance gentleman talking about what the ramifications are. I do believe as a consumer that our insurance is not affordable for the people that live in Michigan because of the state of our economy. But I also do believe that, that if it is important to carry insurance and that people have to understand that that small percentage that they're putting towards a catastrophic fund is well spent, and there are a lot of people out here that are trying to do things, and I do appreciate that there's a lot of people that have to use all their energy to deal with their disability, and then there's people like me that have been able to do a lot more, and I'm just very thankful for the support of the Michigan Catastrophic Fund. So thank you for your time.
You're really an inspiration, and Megan, we saw you over there too. Thank you for what you're doing. How we doing on the audience poll? We getting close? Okay, just let me know when. All right. Scott, did you want to talk again? Okay, all right. L.J. Reed from Kalamazoo, Michigan. L.J. Reed? Not here? Left? Okay. Jerome Donovan? Donovan, if you just adjust it and pull it up to
Can you folks hear me? Okay. My name's Jerry Donovan, Donovan. And first of all, I want to say to everybody who is here testifying to the quality of the MCCA, God love you. Such courage, I can't even put into words. Secondly, to answer your first question, Mr. Commissioner, is our insurance rates affordable in Michigan? The average premium is $1,000 a year. The average driver drives 10,000 miles a year. That equates to, if I'm not mistaken, 10 cents per mile driven. Okay? So when you equate it to those terms, I think affordability is something that's not outside the realm of the industry, if you will. When you factor in that the MCCA fee is $104 per year, now we're talking 1 cent per mile driven. And that's a value even the Dutch can't argue with. So, to that aspect, I think, yeah, they are affordable. The one issue that I will address is the credit scoring issue. Now, bear in mind it's a twofold thing. Credit scoring is not an indicator of driving record or habits. Credit scoring is indicative of premium paying ability by the consumer. So, to make things fair for all parties, remember this: when there's a premium to be paid, you can pay it one of two ways, in full or in installments. If you break it down into installments, it becomes a financial product. And at that point in time, credit is a factor that should be taken into consideration. However, if the consumer says, I'll pay in full, it should be removed. That's the fairest way to do it, in my opinion. The other thing to keep in mind is we go back to the doctor in Bloomfield Hills, and I'm thinking maybe the machinist has a degree. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is this: that machinist may be in a better position from a consumer standpoint, and here's why. Insurance companies have gotten into the habit of only addressing credit scores on new business applicants. What that means is that machinist who's shopping his rate, if his credit's good and his driving record's good, he may in fact be in a better position than the physician in Bloomfield Hills. And the reason being is, if he's a long-term customer of company ABC, they're not going to do a voluntary insurance credit score on him. As the saying goes, let sleeping dogs lie. I don't know how many people I talked to over the course of time where you were able to save them 30, 40, 50% on their insurance. What happens? They contact their current carrier. And then magically, here's a better rate. How many of us have done that with credit cards? You go to cancel one, and next thing you know, oh, wait, we've got a better rate for you. Sure glad I called. They could have called me, but they didn't. And basically, that's all I have to say about it. Again, God love you folks. Michigan has provided the families, come the holidays, to have people and not pictures. And for that, you can't put enough good things. Thank you.
All right, although I thought I saw Paul Mayhew. All right. Okay, so you also filled out an audience poll, and I thought I'd share those results with you. Question number 1, have your auto insurance rates gone down in the last 2 years? 25% said yes. 57% said no. 18% don't know. Question 2, should insurance companies be able to keep their privilege of being able to raise rates without first being reviewed and approved by the state insurance commissioner? 10% said yes. 85% said no. 7% don't know. Number 3, should insurance companies be allowed to use your credit history, your occupation, and your level of education in setting your rates? 14% said yes. 79% said no. 7% don't know. Question 4, should insurance companies be allowed to sell your personal information to third-party marketing partners, a practice called data mining? 3% said yes. 97% said no. And 6%, 0% don't know. That was 100%. 5, nationally, insurance company profits are at their highest levels in U.S. history. Should excess profits be used to lower premiums? 79% said yes, 21% said no, don't know 0. Question number 6, should the state insurance commissioner be allowed to order refunds to the public if he or she finds companies have overcharged the public? 86% said yes, 10% said no, 3% don't know. Question number 7, if you did not have access to an automobile, could you get to work by public transportation? 48% said yes, 52% said no, none said don't know. And the final question was, if you did not have access to an automobile, would this limit your future employment prospects? 79% of you said yes, 10% of you said no, 10% said don't know. So that's the audience poll. Thought I would do that also at the hearings just to kind of see where people's heads are. That concludes the hearing today, and I must say that I'm just so grateful for the input. This is serious business, as y'all heard, and I've learned a lot today. And so with that, I thank you for your graciousness in being here, and I promise to you that I'll give you everything I've got in terms of trying to make the system better.